Welcome everyone to our end of the month Create a World collaborators call. So this is where we all come together as a team of facilitators and collaborators to be with what's been really up in the past month and also what's up as we move forward into the next month. I just want to share with you briefly about Create a World if this is your first time joining us. So we created Create a World as a conversation, because conversation is really humanity's most sacred medium. And we created this conversation within the field of Tantra Maat, which is guided by certain principles. Principles like everything operates on behalf of everything else. Everything's part of everything else. Everything is in relationship with everything else. Everything has a place. That's the one I'm really working with lately. Everything has a place. Everything operates on behalf of life and has us exist as whole. And everything is always moving to the next greater whole, which is really, I think, what will be our focus today. We're a cultural community that is committed to curiosity. And so we invite you to be with us here in a space of curiosity, because we want you to explore for yourself what really resonates with you and what you hear today. And that's critical because only you can be you. Only I can be I, only we can be us. And so we're really here in Create a World to help you stand strong in your unique and essential design. And today we're going to explore something very significant and profound for this time. And I'm going to turn it over to Tantra to tell us a little bit about that.
I was saying before we got on the call, what a lot of people don't know about me, because I've actually been fairly normal, believe it or not, for quite a few years. And but I didn't start the work I do normal in any way. In my 20s, I was in my teens, in my 20s, I had a mentor, and I really had to deal with the fact that I heard a voice and I got messages and I got shown things and I channeled them. And that was the New Age era, for those of you that don't know. And then a community, Deb Merchant on this call being the ringleader, that formed around me because I didn't really have a sense of everyday life. And I only lived in this mind of creation, i.e. the book, You as the Mind of Creation, came from that. And but in 1994, it must have been an epic. There must have been something going on. I was not the only one. People were having visitations, and they were getting, I think it's where Mafu started, where the wife of a policeman who had never done anything like I was doing had this being show up at the foot of their bed, whereupon her husband ran for his gun, and and he explained to them that he'd come to make sure that we were even. And he would always say, "Art thou even?" Which is very close to the God angel that said to me, "Have them not be afraid. Stay even, stay balanced, stay in touch with the greater systems of creation, whereupon what we're about to go through is only a passing phase. So we almost did it a few weeks ago, and there was a blip. And so they asked if we could do it today in our collaborator meeting, and I'm glad to do it. The really important part for me isn't the story. It is the story, but it's the effect, because all of them have now read the prophecy. Deb helped me edit the prophecy, and see what each of the collaborators are drawn to in the in the reading of it, what's resonant for them. Air Force jet. What, if you can hear it, what's resonant for them, what it calls up. One of the things in 2024 I'm going to be working with is reflection, and not reflection like we're like mirroring. People talk about mirroring, but we've got to get outside the confines of interpreted language, how we've been told the meaning of different words. We've got to get out of it. And because the way we're being interacted with is not the world we've been in and how language has been used. So the minute I say something, let's say in this group, the minute I say something, Victoria will start to reflect on that. And as she reflects on that, something becomes present that may have nothing to do with the linear or the logical or the sense making, but that reflection is coming from the greater mind of creation. That's where reflection comes from. And it lets us move outside of our linear way of thinking and the way we've been trained to use the same words. Imagine we were born into a culture where love has to mean the same thing to everybody. I mean, if that's not flat out ridiculous, I don't know what is. But now that, well, what do you mean by that is useless. It's just useless now. And when that God angel, well, the two of them, when they visited me, I was a complete, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean? Except what was moving through me, I could tell my mind, my neural processor, which is why we have the creation templates now. They also came from those realms. That's why I know now that when my neural processor is reaching for something, is reaching for much more complex comprehension so that my amygdala calm down because they're getting right information. And the right information is get your kids in the car and go to the grocery store 2 towns away. But we're stimulated by fear, but it is more than likely what we're moving into 24, 25, 26, there will be those of us that are stimulated by knowing, stimulated by the kind of adrenaline that lets us go calm. Adrenaline can make you go calm. It's like you're in your football game. It's called a zone. Everybody's heard of it, and it is adrenaline. But it's the adrenaline that allows you to reflect on something you hear. And in that reflection, more than ever, this kind of right action or right attention or right concentration on something begins to occur. And the prophecy was written and produced. It's been around a long time, but because the fifth prediction is more than likely on its way to becoming true. And he asked us, do not be afraid. Is that good enough, Janice? You're muted.
Yeah, I wonder if you will just speak a little bit of, you don't need to go necessarily into the 5 pieces of the prophecy if you don't want to, but basically the prophecy outlined some turmoil that would be signaling. Do you just want to speak to that briefly?
Well, the first prediction, and this was in 1994, and I think it all started moving around in the 2000s. The first prediction was a president would be elected by dubious means. Turned out to be George Bush Jr. That was questioned his validity of his election. That same president would not have any interest in foreign policy. And I really researched this. And while he did have interest in foreign policy, when 9/11 happened, it became dominant. And in part because I was actually in on part of that because of visions I had with the CIA. But the point is that there was something not attended to in his administration that had something occur that might not have. The third one was that New York would New York would burst into wings of fire, obviously, Twin Towers. The fourth one was that two things would happen at the same time, man-made and environment-made. One was the AIB bank collapsed, and we went through that collapse of the banking system. And the very same day, there was a gigantic hurricane that hit the Gulf in Texas. So, but the interesting thing for me, and I thank you for asking that question. I'm probably going to cry. But the interesting thing for me is before every one of them, I sort of came online. I didn't know. It wasn't like I knew something was about to happen. I mostly remember the Twin Towers because I was sitting in a sauna, just chatting, and I felt the blood drain out of my body. I mean, like that. And I became very still and very quiet. And 2 seconds later, somebody came screaming into the gym. The Twin Towers had been hit. So there's always this prelude of a sentient attentiveness to my spirit self, to my spirit consciousness that takes me out of my everyday world and has me become alert. My intention next year, and my intention through presenting this today, is that we trigger or we catalyze or we activate this part of each of us, because we can't spend time finding out what's going to happen when we're busy with something happening. We have to have different systems of response. And the last one is the dogs from the east will bite the tail of the warmongers when they least expect it. And I do believe that's in formulation. And I do believe we don't have the details, except the point of prophecy. The point of connecting into the prophecy is it carries an energetic mapping. It carries an energetic transmission. And we become part of why that God angel came, took me where he took me, talked to me the way he talked to me, on behalf of all of us, not on behalf of his ego, but on behalf of making sure that something was going to have to happen for something that had disturbed the paradise of humanity here. And in the completion of that, how necessary and profound it was, and we need to take care of ourselves while greater systems of reality take care of the business of returning this place back to what it was originally designed to be.
You know, it makes me think of when a bone is broken and there is a need to reset the bone before, you know, the cast gets put on to start the healing process. And that, my understanding, thank goodness I've never experienced it, but my understanding is that resetting of that bone is incredibly painful. I think about during one of the Super Bowls, actually, Joe Theismann broke his leg, compound fracture in the middle of the game, and just watching everything that happened around him having to be taken care of. But so to me, in a way, we're in this place right now of the bone being reset, and it is incredibly painful and scary sometimes, but it's happening because it has to happen for the healing to begin. And so then to me, the be not afraid is to say this is all part of the plan to return us to our original nature of our original design, get us back to that paradise that you're speaking of, Tantra.
Yeah, I want to jump in here and see if I can get it in order. Sometimes, like, let me go back to the system I know is a little bit better is the Bible. I don't know the Quran. I don't know the Torah. There's a lot I don't know. But what I have studied in the Bible, there's a lot of prophecy, a lot. And people were prophets. And that was an integral part of society. In our Western world, we don't have, I've never heard it preached about what it was like to have that be an integral part of society. I have no idea what that was like. And I think we've lost that. And I think the focus has become on events like what Tantra just said. The dogs of the East will bite the tails of, I always get that wrong. Sorry, Tantra. The event. And the focus in this instance is have them be not afraid. That's also in the Bible. Not, and I say it from that point of view because I know a lot of Christian stuff reactivates people, and a lot of it should because it's been misused. The point is that has been an instruction for training, for developing yourself, for shifting your ways of being, that I have no connection to politics, or very little, so the events, while I may be affected later, what's more important is that I learn, all right, what does be not afraid mean? What is that like? How do I be? How do I accomplish that? And then attune to my own spiritual wisdom for whatever guidance I get around preparing, or if I don't get guidance around preparing. So that's one thread. And so I'm not going to get caught up in the events until or unless I have to, but I'm not putting my head in the sand either. I'm following my own guidance to attune to what stands out to me. And I do suggest that the have them be not afraid is supposed to stand out for everyone. And like starting now. But I've even watched people try to not be afraid from a complete fear base. So if that's starting where you're starting, then so be it. The second part of it is it's much more common. It is supposed to be common to have spiritual experiences and awareness and knowing, or if you don't want to call it spiritual, I don't have a better word right now, but that's part of human nature. And in modern Western cultures, that's not included. That's not validated. So what I'm saying is in no way minimizing Tantra's experience, and I lived through it with her. I mean, back when it happened. So I'm not minimizing it. I'm not minimizing anything of the people that in the New Age movement became really well known. What I'm trying to say is that it's expectable. So your own spiritual awareness and knowing and intuition, and you may have vision, that listen to that, cultivate that, cultivate it as a tool, as a aspect of being that is useful to you. And you may live in a way or in an area where nobody but you gets that piece of awareness. And I don't know if it's yours to convince others to hear it, get it, have the same, agree with you kind of thing or not. But it might be, it might not be. That's all for discernment. Part of the point, besides the extremely important message of be not afraid, and for me, I keep getting the prepare, prepare, prepare that's been there for all these years. And I don't know what that means. And I don't mean it in a amped up, fear-based way at all. But start discovering all of that for you and strengthen that relationship to that aspect of being human. I'm complete for now.
I'm going to respond to a question. It's from Lisa. I'm curious what you would say about fear that is in my system rather than felt in response to a situation. If that makes any sense. So Lisa, first of all, I'm going to share as my my humanity. You have no idea. You can, Deb will probably make facial expressions as I go through this. You have no idea what it was like the months following that prophecy, because it was like getting orders from headquarters. And everything I ever did from that point on, taking people on journeys to Ireland, the creation templates, the activations, every bit of it came out of that driver, that I was driven. I was driven to where I was standing, that I could, when this fifth prophecy, I am going to cry. That when this fifth prophecy became active, that I would have, with whoever's lives I could have touched, I would have. So all my work is in system restoration. Everybody on this call, by the way, all their work is in system restoration. Restoring listening to one's voice, Janice. Restoring to listening to the body, Victoria. Deb, listening to the psychological aspect of how we explain ourselves and who we are. Liz working with children that carry these systems that already are on the other side of something, that we need to create a world for them. Electra in the Language of Consciousness Institute. All the people around me, without their knowing maybe, have dedicated their lives to this moment where we can say that we're doing what we need to do to have people systemically not be afraid. I recommend the activations, not to promote my own work, but I'm redoing my website for 2024. I'm making sure that I can meet with people about the books I've written. I'm making sure that the activations are monetarily available to people in a way that lets people have the chance. So any kind of system work, Safagio tones, creation templates, anything you find, it is the system, because our personalities in the model we were born into molded us to be afraid, to be afraid, and to fear the world around us, each other, ourselves, and life itself. And we need to take this time dedicatedly. Now, we need to take this time in the midst of already being triggered to operate another way at a personality systemic level, and to begin to turn the tide, begin to shift the flow. Whatever works. I'm commanded, I'm compelled to do what I do and to offer what I offer, and Institute and others, because it's a beautiful world when you can fear and not be afraid.
Yeah, I want to add to that. Oops, sorry, Janice, go ahead.
So the piece of this that I want to presence is the idea of that you feel it in your system, as opposed to in response. And I think it's important to remember that as the sort of the animal part of us that is here in beingness on this planet, we are all connected to everything. We're all connected to each other. We're all connected to everything animate and inanimate on this planet. But again, for most of us, if we grew up in any kind of Western culture, that's not how we were raised. We were raised to think of ourselves as very separate, distinct containers, and never the twain shall meet. And so when we feel something in our system, we're feeling it in the system of which we are all a part. It's just that we've been trained to ignore that knowledge, because we're taught that if you hear a voice that that there's something wrong with you mentally, right? Rather than, no, you're tuned in to all of the levels of existence that are around you, rather than just the very sort of right in front of your face part that we're raised to pay attention to. Anybody who, you know, has experienced deep empathy knows that deep empathy isn't just observing, it's being in what another person is being in. And so I also think that part of what's really important about this prophecy is us reclaiming, Tantra would probably describe it as our sentient intelligence, right? Our knowing, and that when we feel that thing, it is not something to be brushed off. It is something to pay attention to, because that is part of, you know, what, as Deb talks about, prepare. Well, you're preparing for the moments when you get these messages to get in the car and drive 2 miles away, to, you know, to go check on, you know, your house and it turns out you left the stove on or something like that, right? But I mean, our sentient intelligence is part of what we need to reclaim in this process, and recognize that skill, that ability is part of living in paradise.
And our psychic ability, and our psychic ability isn't fortune telling. That's really a bad rap. Our psychic ability is being in the mind of our soul. And to those of you who are listening, it's between you and creation. It's you have to decide if you're part of the future, and if you're a participant, and if you are open to be an active participant and to develop the skills, the stamina, and capacities that are unique to you.
I'd love to chime in. It's no mistake that I started practicing yoga in 1994. And that was the beginning in a new way of developing those sentient intelligences. And then I knew I was a part of something that I couldn't explain when I had a premonition the morning of 9/11. That just set the course for me of participating in the greater field of creation. I knew I was a part of something. I didn't have the language and the cognitive capacity of it that I have now. But I had the listening, and I had the moving with and through occurrences that started in 94, and then 2011 was a very obvious experience to me. And I happened to be in the Gulf of Mexico waters at that moment. And people took pictures of me because all of the animals of the waters were gathering around me in that moment.
Oh.
The dolphins, the stingrays, the fish, they were all just kind of circling around me. So it's that brings me forward today to the prophecy, and the way we operate in these moments. On some level, it feels really pragmatic to me. And one of the ways, I was finishing up Tantra's new book, The Mind of Creation, and I was reading The Emotional Palette. And I'm really paying attention to the work that I'm moving into on behalf of what I'm here to do is all about the body giving space for the emotional palette to be multidimensionally available to us as we move in these times. And I just know I'm moving with it. It wasn't a thought I had. Oh, let me do emotional well-being as my work. It was, you're doing emotional well-being as your work. Almost that sense, Tundra, that you're talking about, being clear that everything you do is about this moment in time going forward. So I'm complete for now.
I find it fascinating that when you brought up where you were during that time, Victoria, I was reflecting back, okay, where was I in 1994 versus 9/11? And in both time periods, I was in a position where I had to be in communication with many educators. And trying to bring forward language arts standards at that time in 1994 at a district level. And then during 9/11, I was a writing coach, a district writing coach. So it was all about communication. So that just kind of fascinates me that there was a kind of a common thread there. And that I was really pinged when I read this from the prophecy. It says, communication is connective tissue. I just love that. Communication comes differently for all. And this is what we've been speaking about this morning. For some, each other. For some, inner hearing. For some, channeled works. Follow attraction. It is the quickening process. Do not care about product of conversation, only connection. And so that really pinged me because part of my inner hearing is a voice, is some sort of a force that comes in. And part of the aspect of who I am as an educator for children is to live in curiosity with them, by their side, and live in innocence too. So when I'm working with children now, I'm in this magical place with them, creating newly what learning is. And lately, I've been getting voices coming in that are leading me to creating new types of products for middle school children. There aren't a lot out there that motivate them to want to learn. And so this has just come in, and I'm working with a group of children, well, now teens, in creating this beautiful little adorable fantasy family that's going to become a card game. So for me, my through line in here is creativity, innocence, play. And at the same time, this is empowering these children to bring their gifts forward. And so being in that state and being guided to be there right now is such a gift during this time of be not afraid. So I wanted to bring that forward because it all just kind of flowed in during this time, that this, we were talking about curiosity, that we come with curiosity. And I'm just being shown this, and with these children bringing in this, actually, it's a very vibrant field when I'm sitting with these students that I have right now. I sit with students one-on-one at this time in a quote tutoring process, but it's not that at all. It's magical. It is just a magical space to be in, full of creativity, curiosity, innocence. And this is what these young people are bringing to teach those of us who could be considered elders at this time. So I'm complete for now.
What I love is this thing that when you're an elder and if somebody looks at you and says you've got gray hair and you're old, their view of what you are is different than what you are or how you experience it. I've been talking to friends lately, and basically we all say, well, there's this timeless person inside of me who's at least 30 and maybe up to 50. And we recognize the capabilities that we have, even though on the outside, we are kind of surprised to see this older person because that's not who we are on the inside. One of the things I'm experiencing during this call is a lot of energy running through me. It's really strong and it's moving. And that for me is always an indicator that something to pay attention to it. And that something larger than me is occurring. And I was thinking as I was experiencing it, I thought, if I didn't know this, I might get scared by it. It goes back to what Janice said, in that we think it's all just us. And if you think it's just occurring within you, then you think you have to control it. Or at least I used to think I had to control it. When we start to recognize ourselves as part of a greater whole, as being interconnected with all life, then when sensations run through you, energies run through you, a knowing comes to you, you pay attention to it. And paying attention is really a critical factor in the process of being aware of what's occurring in the greater whole. So you've heard people say, I had a premonition, I had a sensing, I had a knowing, and they didn't throw it away because they knew that when that occurred, something greater was going on. And that's what I would say would probably be the answer to fear. Because when fear comes up, it's nice to go, that's interesting. What's this going on? Why would I have fear now? It might be that you shouldn't step off the side of the road right now because there's a car coming that's speeding. Or it may be what you've recognized as a register in your body. And by register, I mean a sensation, an emotion, energy running through you. How you've registered it and called it a name and called it fear may not be fear, to be quite honest. It may be another kind of information coming into you. So when we hear the phrase, do not be afraid, it carries fear on the everyday level. Will my child get to school okay if I let her walk? To the fear that people had when the towers were blown up. Oh my God, how is our world changing? And all those registers inside, we have to learn to pay attention to understand what level of information is being guided to us. Is it, no, today, I think I'm going to walk with my daughter today to school. Don't normally do, but I'm just going to tell her I'm going to walk with her because something tells you that this is more than just a mother's fear for wanting her child to be safe. Or it may be, oh no, she's fine, look at her. She's with her friends and she's okay. And that's what I would say to people, is when you have fear, step back from it, gain perspective. When you step back from something, you become an observer of yourself and of the situation. And in that observing, you get new perspectives and you find out, is this something to pay attention to, or what is this situation showing me? And this is built over time. This isn't like an instantaneous, I'm going to download an app and now I know how to do it. It's a paying attention. The Victoria who had a premonition didn't know what the premonition was about. But once something occurred, she went, oh, okay, when I get that sensation, that premonition, that means something of greater importance is going to occur. And so it's a learned process. And I learned it a lot when I was a massage therapist, that I would get a knowing about where to work on an individual person. And in responding to that knowing, I started to get more accurate in my observing. But about ourselves, I think this is a high energy shift time. And if we don't have faith and trust that there's a larger energy looking out for us, we could get really scared, because a lot of stuff is shifting. And I would say that your relationship with creation, that's what we call, what you may call God, Goddess, Great Spirit, Allah. It's really important to cultivate that, but not, I wouldn't say you have to do it in the way you did as a kid. I do it through the creation exercises, because, and that's the templates of the language of creation. In writing those, I know that I'm in direct connection by the end of it, not only with my greater wisdom, my larger self, but also with creation. And in knowing that we are cared for there, that we're part of a process that is being unfolded on our behalf. That's your safety range. You know, okay, I don't need to be afraid. I know this process. So the prophecy that says the three major religions got to work it out. Then you go, okay, I'll take a deep breath on this one. And if part of me is, my life is going to be endangered by that, working it out, then I make the best I can to pay attention to what is occurring so I can be safe and my family can be safe. And if not, I just say, they're working it out. They have to complete their story, I think is the phrase that they used. And yeah, it's both. It's like, be aware of what your sentient registers are. Observe, pay attention, and find your way to your relationship with creation, because this larger energy does have our back, and it is working out for humanity for the next larger recursion. We like to say that humanity is returning to its original design, and we are returning to our living in paradise. And I think that's absolutely true. I'm complete.
I just want to read the last two of the first voice that came through my head, given everything that's been shared. And it has something to do with this understanding that something happened when religion separated human beings from the direct link with creation and gave it a name. A nun in Sligo once said to me, the minute humanity gave that force a name, it separated us from it. And so it's the wars are about what's God and what protects us, but what also kills in the name of. So in the light of what I just said, I just want to read this last part. It is true you sit in the God center as you know it. This must be ascertained. Without this ascertained, the rupture of the mind will be immense. It's what Electra said. We must return to that we're part of a greater system of creation that has a mind that operates on our behalf. And there were beings called gods that came here that did not operate on behalf of humanity, in fact, enslaved them. This sense of separation is unyielding and cumbersome, leaving egoic life forms floating in limbo. There is no concern here, for the quickening is in toto. The end result is light mind, and the diversification is those who will be the material for the mind and those who will be the mind minding the mind. Fusion, mind difficult in discussion, for mind is known as God essence in that being's reality. You as egoic center, you do not know. Fusion is what is known. Fusion is where everything becomes part of a next greater whole and is nothing like what went before. Your egoic structure would rupture if it ingested that you dreamed what you call God into existence. You would have to be up to pulsing vibrationally open to God essence. And as you individually and collectively are vibrated into that essence, you experience being the dreamer and the dreamed. There's no arrogance here, for you're present for the first time to the innocence of humanity and you as child of humanity. It is a joyous time, for the illusion is remembered in its poetic delight, unfolded since earth dimensional time began. All writing becomes real and felt. Truths are flesh delights. The illusional realities experiences a richness, a serendipity as orchestra chords and notes, as if the illumination radiates out beyond the temporal fixation. Explanation is only delighted in when light essence. It exudes from the essence of it. Questions become access codes to dimensional openings. Trust your voices. They are being raised as one voice. Do not take too much stock in your perception of what you say. Communication is occurring simultaneously with mind, body, spirit breaking up. Yet communication is connective tissue. Communication comes differently for all. For some, each other. For some, inner hearing. For some, channeled works. Follow attraction. It is the quickening process. Do not care about the product of conversation, only the connection. And that is how CreateAWorld got born, out of that information. Thank you. Deb, didn't you want to say something?
I'm not, I do, but I'm not sure what I want to say.
Then you have complete permission to be sloppy.
Well,
Go do Deb speak.
that happens a lot.
It's all in the voice, not in the understanding. I just read that. It's all
Yeah.
in communication.
Yeah, it's not about that. It's about
Can you believe we're here, Deb? How many
yes
years?
and no.
Yeah, me too.
Yes and no. Because in a way, I have felt this forever. In fact, I think I'm going to start with whatever I was dreaming. I woke up with a statement in my mind, something along the lines of, "You've been understated to the point of betrayal."
Wow.
And I think that's a multi-dimensional statement. There are ways that that's accurate applied to me as an individuated being. And that's a whole set of things to look at. But I think it's true of humanity. Or that's how I'm going to speak about it here. And it has to do with the connection and communication. And that doesn't mean like there's a lot of drama and loudness and blaringness about how, at least we here in America, the billboards and the advertisements and the shiny sparklies. And so it would look like we're very self-expressed and very out there, but I don't think that's true. I think that's a mirage. And I heard a lot of that in what Electra said, and Liz, everybody on this call. And the person who asked about fear in their system. We're discovering what's real, what's not. Like the fear in your system could be what Electra said. Is there something immediate to be afraid of? Are you having a premonition of something coming? Is it the systemic or conditioned fear that's interlaced in our society? And we're kind of, it kind of then becomes so. There's just so much capacity of human nature. And it might look quieter, more understated, but have more realness to it. There's so many pieces. It's hard to tease it out. And then to be shifting into a time where all these different aspects of creation really have been on our behalf. That's my focus. There are a lot of energies that are not on our behalf. And it's important to be consciously aware of that in whatever way is real for you.
Yeah.
Hmm.
On the YouTube, somebody asked if you would speak more to what you think, not what you're telling us is real, but what you think it means, the betrayal of humanity.
Betrayal of humanity.
You mentioned that a minute ago, that it could be.
I did, yeah. Well, okay. I guess for whoever asked that, for me, the way I just talked is a part of what I think it is. Is that what they said? Can you read that again?
Yeah, the question is, would you speak more to what you think betrayal of humanity is? You've been understated and betrayed. What?
Understated to the point of betrayal is what the statement I woke up into.
Right. They're asking for more of your perception. That for you, yourself.
I think we've been so diminished. Myself?
No, you're good. You're in the right path.
Okay, thanks. We've been so diminished. The word I've used a lot is redacted. Oh, wow. I don't know how to, I'm kind of so in the experience, it's hard to.
Actually, that probably satisfied the question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, there was a time in the forming of the United States where we were largely a community of craftspeople. And so there were people that forged things out of metal. There were weavers. There were, carpenters. And in some cases, people were in those professions because they've been born into a family that was there. But I think sometimes when people talk about craving the good old days, I think they're talking about craving a time when people understood themselves as a contribution and a connection. And to me, that is also what the Be Not Afraid is calling us towards, because we each do have something to bring. And and for me, the betrayal of humanity is acting like there's right and wrong ways to be, which creates limitation, acting like we are in competition against each other rather than collaborating and connecting. So because those things take us out of the original nature of our original design. But so I'll share a quick story about I've been a teacher most of my life, and I found myself for a period of time teaching in a girls' detention center right outside of inner city Baltimore. It was rough. And but these girls were, they were teenagers. Some of them were as young as 12. The summer came, and we still had to have school because the kids. The rule was the girls had to be in school every day, even during the summer. And so my fellow teacher and I created sort of a creative arts program because we wanted to give them a break from, the traditional school. And the very first day we did this, we pulled out the paints. And each of the girls started to paint, and a silence descended on the room that was not just sound silence, but being silence, as these girls moved into a space of self-expression and connection. And when they had basically sort of little sheriffs that escorted them from one class to another, and when the sheriffs showed up at the end of the class, they walked in the door, they're like, what did you do? And what we did was give them an opportunity to be the original nature of their original design, and to feel a part of and connected rather than disconnected and against. And so we can all be a part of stepping into what is ours to do, right? And that's why we need to be able to hear what our system is saying. That's why we need to prepare, so that when something happens, we are able to respond rather than react. And you hear Tantra make that distinction a lot. Because in response, we are part of contribution. And in my experience, when human beings are in contribution, all is well in their world.
I also just want to add a little bit to, I do have a vision of what the God angel said to me, and what whoever that insulting being that told me I didn't have enough gray matter to get the message through. But the image is that it becomes none of our concern. The image is that we know that the greater powers and forces are taking care of things, and that we're busy being with each other, being with ourselves, and being with life, unless we're on the hot seat. And if we're on the hot seat, that there is a maturing of our direct link with creation, so we can hear what's ours to do on that hot seat. And somebody's two things have been said to me that I always smile about. Never thought I'd make them public. One is that spirituality is a living system inside the human form. It is the primary system. It is not the secondary system. And a lot of the healings I've been through, mentally, emotionally, and physically, is because that's my foundational realm. Not believing in something, but to be alive, be inspirited regardless of circumstances. So if the person who asked the question had to leave, but she said it calmed her system to listen to us. But the one thing that I think the goal is to have a life so worth living, so alive with life, so engendering paradise in the midst of anything, that, like Daniel in the lion's den. I think the boys in the fiery furnace and Daniel in the lion's den are the two examples of the character of the emotional palette that we should practice, we should embrace. And Cahill Gibran's on joy and sorrow. I think those are great guidances, because the two prophetic groups I did, I had no idea it was going to lead to this. Develop a healthy emotional palette. That means cry when you're sad, laugh when you're glad, and yell when you're mad. And very few people even have room for that. And then the next year it was everything will go through the emotional field now. Everything will go through the emotional field. And then this last year was all about paradise, that it already exists, that our systems are formulating from it. And imagine formulating from something beautiful and wondrous and extraordinary, and having your system have to trash what's not beautiful, wonderful, and extraordinary. And I think we're purging terror, and I think we're purging fear. And I think that our job is to find homeopathic remedies or vibrational frequencies or conversations that let the body move through this in grace and ease. You know, for me, I don't think we should. I think that we're at an edge that we were born for, and there's no sense traumatizing ourselves with more trauma when there actually could be good news. It could end up in good news. Go ahead.
And Kendra, I just want to voice that I believe betrayal moved through this field through Deb in that emotional moment before the words came. I tracked her emotional field. And so curiosity to go back and observe again for all of us.
I definitely will be doing that. That will be happening. Yes.
Beautiful.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us for this conversation. Our wish is that you are able to carry forth from it with that which feeds your soul. We'll see you next time.